Hey guys, uh, okay, so I like to talk about the state and the economic and geopolitical state of the world. So, bro, why are we fighting this war? Why? Because of the American posturing, I guess. Like, because Israel needs to own that area. Honestly, it's because I think it's because the U.S. has basically been in that area for such a long time, and they basically controlled the oil, and then all of a sudden, um, well, nobody was really even threatening anything. The U.S. clearly started this. For what reason, I don't know. They say something about insurgents or something. There was no reason to do this. Israel had no reason to do this. I mean, of course, maybe some of their proxies, some of Iran's proxies. I don't know if Palestine is in there. I don't know, but it's like Yemen and all that, and all these groups that are proxies or whatever. And it's just like, why? Oh, I mean, we weren't going that smoothly, but we were going with pretty much no friction for the longest time. And then now, like, basically you just destroyed the GCC, and you basically destroyed like the entire just by deciding to do stuff to Iran for no reason. Why? Why did you kill those innocent kids? Okay. Anyway, that's the story right now. That's what's going on. But the other thing that's going on is like in America, there might be a civil war coming up. They killed a bunch of nuclear scientists, which this war might go nuclear, and they're talking about the draft, which I believe that draft is coming. I believe ground troops are coming. I believe another Vietnam is coming. I believe it's going to be a shit show, and yeah, it's probably going to be a terrible thing. Just what it is. So, but I'm also surprised. Well, am I surprised? I'm surprised that we haven't explored other alternatives, such as, I don't know, giving people an acre and using modern science to basically have homesteads that people can actually go into for pretty much $2,000 or so. There are $2,000 worth of properties that you could just give to people and pretty much solve homelessness. There are 1 acre properties in Arizona right now that if they just gave away and trained them how to live on that acre, you could feed, well, maybe not Arizona, but like places like Illinois. There's abandoned properties and farms that you could feed at least 24 people per acre. Now, if you micromanage, you could probably get a lot more people in there. But my proposal was to basically have a system where you have 24 people per acre. You do corn, and then that's only like normal corn. That's only normal corn spread like 20,000 seeds, 20,000 plants, about like 200 bushels of corn, 100 and which is like 11,500 plants, or 11,500 pounds. You figure a year of corn is about, a pound or two. So you're getting a pound or two per plant, which is probably about 1 or 2 years per plant. Actually, no, you're getting an average of about 1 per plant with 20,000 plants. So you figure if you even doubled your corn, you could probably if you doubled your corn output per plant, you could probably half the amount of space that you need to take. And you probably can do it no-till. You could probably do it in your suburban lot without even fertilizing or irrigate. Well, probably irrigation a little bit, probably point irrigation. You could probably manage it way better than these micromanaged plots. You could probably grow it right in your grass, just poking a hole and literally putting the corn in and mowing around it when leaving the grass there. Yeah. The other thing is, you could still do that process, but like, you could point source your septic to be part of the process. In other terms, you could probably, hear me out, you could probably spread it out over the entire acre, the 24 people's worth of urine, pee, poop, biological material, garbage disposal, all that stuff, sink, everything that you dump into the water. Instead of it going into your soil and causing a toxic mess in a very small area, you could spread it out to the entire acre, like point source, like, what is it, 20,000 plants, but you're cutting in half, right? So it's probably like about 11,000 plants, so 1 pound per plant. I think you can do 1 pound per plant, which is about 1 to 2 years per plant. If you have a really big ear, it might be 1 pound. It all depends, right? Some corn is so heavy that it might kill the stalk by being so heavy. But anyway, my point is that we can live self-sustainably just by doing that. That's the simple part. Now, you got the corn, right? You have drainage tiles underneath the corn, right? So, because you got the septic going directly on each plant, and you got point fertigation, right? And then you add supplemental water on top of that point fertigation. And then you have drainage tiles that use it as recirculation. You purposely overwater, maybe even put airlifts on that inside the drainage lines in order to lift up some of the oxygen. So you're pumping up, you're recirculating into the corn there before, or you just recirculate the whole drainage and put it back and recirculate it. And that way you're basically treating it. You could even have an airlift pump that point irrigates and oxygenates the air and the water, and basically by the time it gets back, so it's going underneath the drainage line. So there's corn at the top, layer of soil, maybe 4 feet down, drainage tiles, underneath the drainage tiles, all collects in one point, drains into a sump. That sump pumps it. There is a collection basin, and then it drains, and then it goes back and feeds the corn again. You could do that. Or another thing that you could do is you could have that tiny flux, because there is actually 20 people are needed, but the calories are for 24 people, right? So there is an extra flux there, right? There's unaccounted for, especially with the extra, water and nutrients always flowing through. The water feeds the bacteria. So now you have this whole thing of protein and all this stuff in the soil, so that leaves nitrogen able to make itself from the air. You have all this airlifted, recirculating air and dissolved nitrogen in the ground, and then you have more nitrogen than you're using. I was even thinking, why not have 1 or 2 KU/DCU, like kudzus, which basically make more nitrogen than the produce, like, than they use. They make more than they use, sorry. And so what happens is, since you have more nitrogen than you use, and you also have that extra flux, because remember, you only need enough calories to feed 24 people, but you make more nitrogen from the people of about, you only need the nitrogen from 20 people, but you're making the calories of 24 people from the corn, right? Okay, so I was suggesting that you have this septic system, and that's one concept, right? You have this one septic system, recirculate, have an airlift, do all this stuff. You know, of course, the point source, when you actually put it in, you have it sealed off, so when it goes into the corn plant, you know, it's not attracting bugs that are gonna be vectors for disease. That's the whole reason that people are scared of this. But if you separate it, and if you know what your detergents are and all that stuff, and you separate it, and you still have your lawn, it's attractive, and it's not gonna hurt anything. Like, literally, it's the same stuff that would be in nature anyway. Now you're dealing with it. You're dealing with your shit, literally. The other thing that I was gonna say, okay, so you take accountability for your shit. You also have an algae pond. Well, okay, so basically, once it goes all the way down, it drains. It's so pure, so filtered. There's almost no excess nitrogen in there. There's only the nitrogen that just flowed in from the septic, right? So it just flowed through all of that soil. So it's pretty much like a sand filter for free. So now it's very clear, it's very clean. Guess what you do? Before you airlift it back, you put it through a long algae filter. Most of the pathogens that were already caught, they already caught through the soil, and they already fought. They had to go through, they had to touch at least one microbe that likes to fight. Guess what's gonna happen? They're gonna lose every time. There's all this air in the soil. They're gonna lose every time. So they have to go through all that. They have to get caught, and they have to have all that cation exchange. And of course, they're gonna get attracted or something, and they're gonna stop right there. And there's more energy right there on top of the stratified layer of soil versus at the very inside of the drainage. It's like 4 feet down, 4 feet of soil. You think water can go through 4 feet of soil and not be cleaner than it was? So, and then the other thing is, algae make situations where it will win, right? So if you have a healthy circulation of algae, a population of algae, and then you take the bottom and you slice it off, and basically the average doubling rate that you've been getting recently, you basically take that. You could serve the protein with like spirulina or chlorella. Chlorella is better because it's like gives you the protein. You could have a protein isolate from spirulina, but chlorella gives you the real B12. So maybe you take out, you extract with alcohol or something like that. Extract everything until it's a white, from green to white, right? So it turns to white. It's protein isolate. You can have protein isolate and store it away from the system. And basically, you can have the protein isolate if you want, and that can probably be the protein, extra protein that you need. And you can keep it in flux. That's my whole point, is that you can take the protein that came out through the corn didn't want it. Now it's nitrogen that corn didn't want. It's still aqueous, so it got pushed down, goes through, gets airlifted into the algae. The algae wants it. Of course the algae wants it. It will take it down to like 100 ppm of TDS, like total dissolved solids. So what you do now, you have a very long algae pond and you cut it off. At the very far end, you cut it off at the bottom, right? At the bottom where everything kind of falls and dies, cut it off. Every few days, you cut it off. That can be protein isolate, and that you make sure you eat that. That's the fast protein. That's what's gonna keep protein in flux. So that's your fast protein, right? You make the protein isolate and you eat it within 5 days or something, or you can just make meals with it. Make sure it's pasteurized or whatever, just to make sure, you know, you did come from a dirty process, although you went through that much soil. And this guy, there is a guy that did a test about this, where they did a gypsy well, a well next to a river in a dirty swamp or whatever. They did it 4 feet away, and guess what? The water was pure. They sent it to a lab, and it was pure as can be. So, I mean, maybe there's a few nitrates, but no. The amount of water and the amount of contaminants, no. For sure, it'll be pretty clean. I mean, we're talking about a 4-foot sand filter, and it's clay. It's very small particulate size. So it has to squeeze, and the chances, just the statistical chance of going through and not touching another bacteria that wants to eat it, another thing, and another something else, for going into the water definitely can, and it wets. It actually wets the soil and has a cation exchange and wets through. But microbes cannot do this. So between the seepage, that microbes can't do this, but you know, water can. It can wet the porous material and go inside the little, because clay is like a little slide. And the whole idea is you can have algae protein every day in flux and still have your 200 bushel corn. And that's great, because the extra flux of about 4 people worth of nitrogen, right? That nitrogen waste, that can be always in flux. You can use that as your buffer, your flux. And in the system, you're always making more nitrogen. You actually, if you want a good thing, you actually want to run a total throughout the whole soil area, the whole 4 feet of soil, which you're using 4 feet of soil. It's very important to use all 4 feet. Sometimes a lot of people don't use the 4 feet. You want to bottom water if you can, but you know, or you don't have this type of system. But yeah, it's just a very interesting thing. And look here, it's very, you know, okay, so you get algae, whatever, you get algae. Now, I think I should leave it here, but I mean, it's already 18 minutes, but you know what? I want to add another layer to this, but I think I'm gonna leave it for the next video.